Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I'm Ian, the gay ADHD reader. I'm gay, of ADHD, and I read, in case you hadn't figured that out. So this episode is like a bookshelf tour, physical TBR. Consider this like a book haul, except in the book haul, it's books that have been on my TBR for a while, or it's even books that I have read and loved. I choose 5 books from one genre and 5 books from another. I categorize all of my books by genre. The categories that I have are historical fiction, and then we got queer fiction, and then, what are we looking at? Literary. This shelf here is my 3 main ones. I love queer, I love lit fic, and I love historical fiction. Classics over here, fantasy, and then graphic novels and horror. And then I have a bookshelf that's over there that you cannot see. Romance, sci-fi, mystery, and nonfiction. Those are all of the genres that I organize my books into, and today's 2 are historical fiction and fantasy. So let's just get into it. From my historical fiction shelves, I have a couple of queer novels that I'm really excited to read. One of them is Last Night at the Telegraph Club. I've heard a lot of people like this, and then actually a lot of people were really underwhelmed by it, which is probably great for setting my expectations going into this, and most likely liking this. It's a sapphic romance. Lily, who can't remember exactly when the question took root, but the answer was clear the moment she and Kath Miller walked under the neon sign of a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. America in 1954 is not a safe place for 2 girls to fall in love. Red Scare paranoia threatens everyone, including Chinese Americans like Lily. With deportation looming over her father, Lily and Kath risk everything for love. Forbidden love type of story, which we queers are quite used to, and I am looking forward to it. I believe it's a little YA. It's a bit chonky, but I'm assuming that it's an easy read. The margins look really good. Next on my shelf is As Meat Loves Salt by Maria McCann. Sorry, I'm looking into As Meat Loves Salt by Maria McCann. This is a queer historical fiction torn into by a vicious civil war. 17th century England was the scene of extraordinary violence. Among the soldiers traveling across the country from one deadly battle to another is Jacob Cullen, a former servant who dreams of baptizing himself with the blood of battle into a new life after the war. Only his brewing erotic obsession with a fellow fighter threatens his plans. A dark erotic tale of passion and obsession. As Meat Loves Salt is a gripping portrait of England beset by war and the harrowing tale of a man on the edge of madness. This sounds really I had not heard of this book until sometime earlier this year. I love big books. Do I always have time for them? No. But when I do have time for them, I really like them because you really get to know the characters. For me, that's a really important aspect to my enjoying a book. I'm looking forward to getting to know Jacob Cullen, which honestly, does that sound like a Twilight name? This was published before Twilight, by the way. It was copyrighted in 2001. Am I crazy in thinking that sounds like a Twilight name? I only read the first one, so I have no idea. If you've read this, please let me know, but also, this was really hard to find. This was not an easy find. When I realized this existed, I went to multiple bookstores and couldn't find anything. I think I ended up buying it offline. It was hard to find, but it's cheap. See, it's not great quality. Next 2 books from the historical fiction part of this have to do with time. The first one, I'm really excited to read this, and I'm just trying to figure out where I can fit it in reading plan wise, because it is well over 600 pages, and that's Connie Willis's Doomsday book. For Kivrin, preparing to travel back in time to study one of the deadliest eras in humanity's history is as simple as receiving inoculations against the diseases of the 14th century and inventing an alibi for a woman traveling alone. For her instructors in the 21st century, it means painstaking calculations and careful monitoring of the rendezvous location where Kivrin will be received. But a crisis strangely linking past and future strands Kivrin in a bygone age as her fellows try desperately to rescue her. In this era of superstition and fear, Kivrin, barely of age herself, finds that she has become an unlikely angel of hope during one of history's darkest hours. Really looking for it. I love medieval era stuff. 14th century sounds absolutely terrifying. I have not read a lot of time traveling things, so I don't really know if that corner of science fiction is my jam or not, but truly anything that takes place in medieval era, I'm just really interested in, which is bonkers because I don't care about medieval history at all. The next one is a book I have read, but I read it so long ago, and there's a bit of a story to this. I ordered this book from Pango Books, which is a great platform. I was like kind of shaken by this. So it came wrapped in this local paper, like newspaper. It had articles about how the city where I live is a terrible place to live and is unsafe. It was honestly very creepy and has thus since then changed my perception of this book. The book is Forever by Pete Hamill. This isn't time traveling, but it's basically about a man who lives forever. This was kind of one of those books that I read in probably with a group of other books. I think one of them was maybe Sula and The Bell Jar. Like, it was just kind of a reading phase in the middle of high school, which is rare because usually in high school I was only reading what I was assigned to read. Stuff that I liked, but also stuff that I didn't. This was part of like prop of just leisurely reading that I really hadn't been doing at that point in time, and I liked this. I also really like the flop on this. That's amazing, right? That's incredible. I was really into this, but worried like it kind of from that kind of person, like kind of book is in this, and also the audacity of that person wrapping this in that kind of newspaper. And I was like, I really hope this is just sarcasm. But then there was some like proselytizing in it. I don't know. It was weird. Just so everyone knows, I majored in religion. Like, bachelor's is in religion from a Lutheran college. I'm not religious, but religion does not scare me, and religious people do not freak me out or make me worry. It's misuse of all of those things that make me worry. And this felt like it was wrapped in misuse. That's what it was. It was wrapped in misuse. That's where I'm at. And then the last in the historical fiction chunk is a book that I have read like first 100 pages of. It's called The World to Come by Dara Horn. This kind of tells two different timelines that are loosely related to each other. The present day contemporary timeline is a man decides to steal a piece of art by Marc Chagall. And so you're just kind of to know him and his relationship to like his family and kind of his neuroses. And then the other part is you're stepping back in time to hang out with Marc Chagall, like almost a biographical aspect to this. And it eventually kind of ties to his family history as well, from what I understand. What's wild is that I can somewhat remember where I'm at. So what I'm thinking of doing is in January 2025, I want to do like a loose ends TBR where I read a bunch of books that I've started but never finished, or maybe a series that I've like, where am I at? Right here. Yeah. The Earth trilogy, I still have yet to read the third book. So I'm like, well, I should just finish that in January. This is part of like Lunar New Year celebration, right? It's like time to wrap up loose ends. Let's finish the things that we did not finish. And I think that this may be a part of it. I've technically been reading, quote unquote, this book for, we don't have to age me. It's multiple decades though. Okay, then we get to the fantasy side of things. So 5 books from fantasy that are on my shelf. First book is The Hike by Drew Magary. So I loved this. It is a bonkers story. Basically, a man arrives at kind of a resort, I think for like a work thing maybe, and he decides, oh, I'm gonna go for a hike for a little bit. And then this hike lasts forever and he encounters weird, strange things, some of which are scary, and he ends up traversing through who even knows, you know, like it's a forest and then it's a beach and then he's on like a boat. It's bonkers, and I loved the ending. Honestly, one of my favorite endings ever. I read this when I was doing like a book with friends during the pandemic, and we all ended up really enjoying this. It's very weird though. It's very different. I need 10 million more things from this author. Sadly, I don't think that's gonna happen. You can do the research yourself, but I freaking loved this, and I am going to be reading more by Drew Magary. Then I have 2 fantasy books that are the first in series. I don't know if these are trilogies or duologies. I'm pretty sure each of these, the second book has already come out. I apparently did not prioritize these quickly enough. The thing with fantasy is I thought I loved fantasy, and I built up my TBR, and then I realized, oh, maybe I don't like high fantasy so much. So I have a bunch of fantasy books that I'm scared to pick up because I'm like, well, what if I don't like them? So I'm nervous about these. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Got the other book like right here. So this is about... In a famine-stricken village on a dusty yellow plain, two children are given two fates. A boy, greatness. A girl, nothingness. In 1345, China lies under harsh Mongol rule. For the starving peasants of the Central Plains, greatness is something found only in stories. When the Zhu family's eighth-born son, Zhu Chongba, is given a fate of greatness, everyone is mystified as to how it will come to pass. The fate of nothingness received by the family's clever and capable second daughter, on the other hand, is only as expected. I've heard really good things about this book, and people that have read it seem to really, really like it. And also, like, it's medieval. I was just talking about. I totally forgot that this takes place in medieval times. It would be so much fun to do, I mean, for me, so much fun to do a TBR that's just like medieval stuff. I'd get really tired of it. But anyway, so this gender bending kind of stuff, I have heard this is queer. It sounds really, really interesting to me. This is why I do this. I'm like rereading this and like, oh yeah, I really want to... Hey, so the next one is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro. This is, from what I understand, paranormal, magic, fantasy, like traveling around the world, 1882 London. And it's about someone who escorts magical children to safety. But that's like all I know of it. It is a chunk. This is why I've put it off. But Victorian era, that sounds really cool. Apparently they go to Meiji era Tokyo. Like, that sounds really cool. I don't know. I'm probably making myself out to be a way bigger nerd than I actually am. All right, and then the last two fantasy books that I own are 100 P Cozy. Definitely. Yeah, that's what I... So first one is Can't Spell Treason Without T, written by Rebecca Thorne. So this is book one in Tomes and Tea series. I don't know if it's a duology, but I think just recently the second one came out, which means I am falling behind. Here's the thing though, what I'm hearing is that this book isn't as good as the second book, and the second book you can read as a standalone. I don't think it was suggested, but I heard that it's totally possible. And I'm like, ugh. I do love these sprayed edges, though. These sprayed edges remind me of like old school mass market paperbacks, you know, from the 70s. From what I understand, it's literally about this sapphic couple that opens up a bookstore bookshop that serves tea with firelight. It's supposed to be that low stakes fantasy like Legends and Lattes, obviously. I don't know much about it. I don't need to know much about it because there's probably going to be like zero conflict in it. So the less I know, the better. And last but not least, Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which I have read and which I loved. This is super cozy. So when a reaper comes to collect Wallace from his own funeral, Wallace begins to suspect he might be dead. And when Hugo, the owner of a particular tea shop, promises to help him cross over, Wallace decides he's definitely dead. But even in death, he's not ready to abandon the life he barely lived. So when Wallace is given 1 week to cross over, he sets about living a lifetime in 7 days. So this is cozy, paranormal, Achillean romance. It's probably the best way to describe it. I did not find this as touching as House in the Cerulean Sea. I think a lot of that just has to deal with like, that one is about adults falling in love with each other, but then also like caring for children who are different. And there's something very special about that. This is more about reflecting on your life, being open to love and opening up to love, like the process of that. And it's just a really touching, cute story that is, I really loved it, but it's not TJ Klune's best. And it's not my favorite of TJ Klune, if that makes any sense. But this is a light read, and it's really cute and touching. I can highly suggest this. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment below, tell me what book has been on your shelf the longest that you have not read yet. Click subscribe, notification button, I don't know, do all the things. Y'all know what to do. Thank you for joining me, and happy reading.